It is the revelation of the year and perhaps even of the entire decade, the Epstein Files. Only now is the world gradually learning that many of the most powerful and wealthiest people systematically exploited women within a sinister network and subjected them to horrific abuse. All of it was orchestrated by a single man, Jeffrey Epstein. The whole thing is so horrifying that you have to ask, how could something like this stay hidden for so long? Why did it take almost 2 decades after the first police investigations into Epstein before it became public to find out just how far this network really reached? Because as you will see today, there were many warnings back then and very urgent ones, not only from famous actors but from other celebrities also. Some of these warnings even appeared quite openly in some of the most popular TV series. And it quickly becomes clear that Epstein's disturbing activities were something of an open secret in elite circles.
Just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up! I know he's your friend, but I don't care.
But in order for it to remain a secret, Epstein and his associates relied on deeply disturbing methods. Because we are not only going to show you warnings from the past, we are also going to show you how those warnings were suppressed. And we begin with hidden clues in TV series and newspapers, starting with a reference from a show famous for often getting its predictions right, The Simpsons. In the episode Mr. X and the Website Trash, which aired in the year 2000, already 26 years ago, Homer is abducted and taken to a secret island where bizarre things are going on and where rich and powerful people send anyone who knows too much about their shady dealings. All of this happens after Homer posts the warning on his website. Attention, some crazy lunatics on an island somewhere are secretly controlling the world. Even though these parallels to the real Epstein Island could theoretically be pure coincidence, one fact suggests that the creators of The Simpsons themselves may have had ties to Epstein. Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre testified in court some time ago that as a teenager she encountered The Simpsons creator Matt Groening on Epstein's private jet. But it did not end with a simple encounter. Groening asked Giuffre to give him a foot massage. As the creator of The Simpsons, Groening therefore likely knew very early on what Epstein was doing on his island. And it is not far-fetched to think that the Mr. X reference may really have had something to do with Epstein. But now it gets even stranger because The Simpsons were not the only series that hinted at Jeffrey Epstein, long before the allegations against him ever became public. As early as February 2011, for example, an episode of the police drama Law and Order aired in which a billionaire who owns a private island throws wild parties there with celebrities and former presidents. The billionaire also has girls brought to him under the pretense that they are there to give him massages and then does terrible things to them. In other words, exactly the same pattern as in Epstein's case. In the episode, the billionaire is helped, just as Ghislaine Maxwell helped Jeffrey Epstein, by a female accomplice who recruits these girls for him. And in an episode of the comedy series It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, it becomes even more specific. In that episode, the shady businessman Frank Reynolds admits that he was the official beverage supplier for Jeffrey Epstein, that he therefore had to shred documents, and he tries to talk his way out of it, but just listen for yourselves.
What? Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah, but before you judge me, know this. Yes, I was on the island, but only for the snorkeling. I didn't know anything about the kid stuff. No, look, 95% of what went on down there was not.
Yeah.
No, the other 5%, that sullied the whole operation.
Although the episode was only filmed in 2021, the explosive accusations Frank is defending himself against were not yet publicly known in such concrete detail at that time. The fact that the examples mentioned earlier, except for the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode released later, never directly named Jeffrey Epstein, even though the creators seemed to know quite early on about Epstein's activities, has a reason. Jeffrey Epstein was so powerful that he could simply silence people who tried to expose his crimes. Which brings us to a fateful event in the year 2003. That year, investigative journalist Vicky Ward came across Maria and Annie Farmer while researching an article about Jeffrey Epstein. The two sisters had suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Vicky Ward realized that she had uncovered something the public absolutely needed to know. She was on the verge of writing a long investigative article about Epstein's operation. It could have brought Epstein down. The sisters were prepared to testify under oath, and there was enough evidence to publish an airtight exposé in the renowned magazine Vanity Fair. But before that could happen, Jeffrey Epstein had already found out about the investigation, and what happened next shows just how far Jeffrey Epstein was willing to go to protect himself. He threatened the magazine with an entire army of lawyers and even personally called the journalist, who at the time was pregnant. During that call, he frightened her so badly that she eventually hired security personnel to guard her hospital bed and the maternity ward.
We had to ask for extra security at the neonatal ward because, and we had to explain that as nutty as it sounded, this strange man had made these threats. We didn't really know who he was or what his background was, but we were frightened. And the worst thing, obviously, as we all know, is that it left Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell completely unchecked to carry on with the abuse.
To send a warning, Epstein used a particularly sinister method. He had a pistol bullet and a cat's head mailed to the magazine's editor-in-chief. So it is hardly surprising that in the final published version of the article, which ultimately appeared under the title "The Talented Mr. Epstein," all of the allegations were missing. Instead, the article merely described how wealthy the billionaire was, what he owned, and how skillfully he handled his business affairs. While Epstein was already stopping exposés before they could even be published, there were also very specific and shocking statements from celebrities and members of the elite long before the Epstein Files were released. But sadly, no one took them seriously at the time. The Lord of the Rings star Elijah Wood, for example, warned as early as 2016 in an interview about a viper's nest. He did not mention Epstein by name back then, but he described exactly the machinery Epstein had built. After Elijah Wood was branded a conspiracy theorist for those statements, the actor mysteriously walked everything back. He said that he had no personal knowledge of such networks after all, and he never spoke publicly about the subject again. He only said that, in his own words, he had now learned his lesson. Eric Weinstein's comments also seem particularly eerie. Weinstein, a renowned mathematician who met Jeffrey Epstein in the early 2000s because the billionaire liked to surround himself with scientists, raised the alarm in academic circles immediately after meeting him. The mathematician quickly realized that Jeffrey Epstein knew absolutely nothing about finance or mathematics. There was simply no way he could have built his enormous fortune as a hedge fund manager. Several years ago, Weinstein said in a podcast that something about Epstein was extremely strange.
He's labeled disgraced financier, but nobody has a record of trading with him. He was sitting there, he comes into the meeting and he says, well, Eric, I was just doing some currency trading. And I thought about that scene that you sometimes see and as a meme with Steve Buscemi with a skateboard over his shoulder.
Hello, fellow teenagers. Hello, fellow financial traders.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, you don't really look like a rich guy who trades in markets.
Instead, the scientists suspected that Jeffrey Epstein had been deliberately built up by intelligence agencies in order to lure politicians and celebrities into compromising situations, gather incriminating material, and make those people vulnerable to blackmail. But Eric Weinstein's warnings more than 20 years ago were also ignored at the time. Melinda Gates, the then wife of Microsoft founder Bill Gates, who later appeared in the Epstein Files, also warned her husband as early as 2011 after his first meeting with Jeffrey Epstein. She urged him never to meet that man again and described her unease in several interviews. Specifically, she said that she had never met anyone who immediately gave her such a deeply unsettling feeling as Jeffrey Epstein. Bill Gates, however, did not listen to her. Curiously, a powerful man who would later appear countless times in the Epstein Files also warned about Jeffrey Epstein very early on. But his warning was not meant to protect other people. It was primarily meant to protect himself, and that man was Donald Trump. As early as the year 2006, the current US president personally called the police chief of Palm Beach. According to the police chief, Trump said during that phone call, "Thank God you're stopping him. Everybody knew what he was doing." He also described Ghislaine Maxwell as the puppet master and as deeply evil. What makes that phone call so extremely strange, however, is the timing. Donald Trump called the Palm Beach police just as they were beginning their investigation into Epstein. So it was not a call that gave the police a lead, but rather a call in which Trump may have been trying to distance himself from the system. Because in the years that followed, Trump suddenly claimed that he had never known anything about Epstein's activities. Even to this day, he insists that he knew nothing about it back then, despite the fact that his name appears more than 1 million times in the Epstein Files. Without the police chief's statement a few weeks ago, no one would ever have known about that phone call. But the most urgent warnings came from those who had experienced Epstein's system firsthand against their will. The victims. Above all, Virginia Giuffre, one of the best-known Epstein victims, tried to warn the public about Jeffrey Epstein as early as 2005, and then again in 2011. She spoke specifically about Epstein's system, the unimaginable events on the island, and she named specific people involved, including Britain's Prince Andrew. For a long time, however, no one believed her. She was smeared as a liar and hit with costly countersuits. Nevertheless, Virginia Giuffre kept going, and her struggle, which lasted nearly 2 decades, ultimately brought Prince Andrew down and sent Ghislaine Maxwell to prison.
Do you think that Prince Andrew will ever be held accountable?
I'm going to try my damnedest. It's ridiculous that it's gone on this long. There's that much evidence that could have all of these people locked up for the rest of their lives. Why are they still walking around free right now? You know, I hope and I pray that the FBI and the international world as well can start standing behind us victims, us survivors. Give us a hand. Do something about it this time. Don't let them keep getting away.
On April 25th, 2025, Virginia Giuffre was then found dead. If Virginia Giuffre's warnings had been taken seriously earlier, Epstein's operation could have been stopped back in the early 2000s, and countless other victims could have been spared immense suffering. Because back in the year 1996, 3 decades ago and long before Epstein's name appeared anywhere in the media, a young artist named Maria Farmer was abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell at the Ohio estate of Epstein's mentor, Les Wexner. She managed to escape afterward, filed a police report, and even contacted the FBI, giving agents names, locations, and detailed descriptions of the perpetrators. The strange part is that the authorities did absolutely nothing afterward. Instead, Maria Farmer was repeatedly threatened with death by Epstein and Maxwell, was forced into hiding, and lived under a false name until the year 2003, when she finally saw a chance to tell the truth about Jeffrey Epstein in a magazine article. However, that article was the Vanity Fair piece mentioned earlier, which Jeffrey Epstein managed to suppress. And so many more years passed before Maria Farmer was finally able to speak publicly and was eventually taken seriously by the authorities.
How were you doing at that moment?
Oh, I was hysterical.
Farmer alleges in her complaint that when she tried to flee the following day, she was not allowed to leave. She claims a member of Wexner's staff warned her.
His exact words were, "You're not going anywhere. You are never leaving. You are never leaving."
Farmer says she escaped only after calling her father for help. In a statement, the Wexners said they had no knowledge of Farmer, never met her, never spoke with her, and the guest house where Farmer says she stayed was not a Wexner guest house. Farmer alleges Maxwell threatened to destroy her reputation in the art world, and in one phone call, she believes, threatened her life.
She says, "You're going out to jog on the West Side Highway every day, and I know this. You need to be very careful because there's so many ways to die there. So you have to be really careful. Look over your shoulder."
Farmer says she reported the assault to the FBI, but she told us it wasn't for another decade, just before Epstein's first arrest in 2006, that an agent finally appeared at her door. Farmer says they never followed up.
In total, she had to live in fear under a false name for a full 24 years before the investigations into Epstein and Maxwell finally made it possible for her to testify safely. So as you can see, decades before the publication of the Epstein Files, many years before Epstein's second arrest, and long before there were even official investigations into the billionaire, there had already been more than enough warnings. And yet Jeffrey Epstein was still able to keep going. But that may be exactly what makes the Epstein Files so explosive, because Epstein's deep ties to countless scientists, celebrities, and politicians allowed his power to grow to terrifying dimensions. And as you have seen, there was a reason why the most important warnings were deliberately kept quiet. But before we wrap up, let us know your thoughts on this topic. Do you believe Epstein had help silencing his opponents? And do you think that one day all of the Epstein Files will actually be released? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.